I want to start by saying this. Kindness is a beautiful thing. It's a radical act of courage to be gentle, to show up with an open heart in a world that often teaches us to armor up. But here's the truth. Kindness is not a license for others to trample all over you, especially when it comes to narcissists. If you're caught in the web of trying to be nice to someone who thrives on control, manipulation, and feeding their own ego, you're doing yourself a disservice. Being nice to a narcissist doesn't make you kind. It makes you vulnerable to being used. And that's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to see it clearly. Narcissism is a reflection of deep wounds. It's not about you. It's about their own unmet needs and fractured self. But when you try to soothe, please, or fix them, you get caught in their storm. And that storm never ends. So instead of being nice, start setting boundaries. Clear, kind, firm boundaries that say, I see you, I respect myself. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to self-love, and they protect your spirit from being worn down. You don't have to seek their approval. In fact, you can't. Their reality is shaped to serve their ego, not to honor your truth. The approval you need is already inside you, waiting to be recognized, embraced, and trusted. Protect your emotional safety like you would protect your home. When you're emotionally drained, you can't show up fully for yourself or anyone else. Self-care is not selfish, it's essential. Let's start here, at the root of everything. You have worth, immense, untouchable, inherent worth, and not because of what you do for others, not because you're nice, helpful, forgiving, or low mental. You have worth simply because you exist. But when you're in the orbit of a narcissist, that truth gets twisted. You start measuring your value by how well you keep the peace, how quiet you can become, how much you're willing to tolerate to keep things from getting worse. Let me say this clearly. Your worth is not up for negotiation. You don't earn it by shrinking. You don't prove it by staying silent. You don't increase it by being endlessly accommodating. Being nice isn't a magic wand that transforms abuse into affection. Sometimes being nice just tells the wrong people that you're an easy target. Narcissists are drawn to kind, empathetic people because they know your heart is wide open. They know you'll give benefit of the doubt. They know you'll keep showing up even when they stop showing respect. And slowly, piece by piece, you start losing touch with yourself. You start second guessing. You wonder if you're the problem, if you're too emotional, too sensitive, too much. You're not too much, they're too unwilling to be accountable. So I want to ask you, when did being kind become a burden? When did you start confusing love with sacrifice? When did you decide that your pain was the price of someone else's comfort? Recognizing your worth means remembering who you were before someone taught you to doubt yourself. It means looking in the mirror and seeing a whole person, not a project, not a doormat, not someone to be fixed or validated through others' praise. It means saying, I am allowed to take up space. I am allowed to say no. I'm allowed to stop making excuses for someone who keeps hurting me. When you know your worth, you stop bargaining with people who want you small. You stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-functioning in relationships where love is conditional and lopsided. And you start choosing something radical. You start choosing you and choosing yourself. That's not selfish. That's sacred. This is one of the hardest truths to wrap your heart around, especially when you've spent so much time trying to be enough for someone who never seems satisfied. Their narcissism is not about you. It never was, and it never will be. It's so easy to internalize their behavior, the silent treatment, the gaslighting, the mood swings, the sudden praise followed by cold indifference. It all feels personal. It feels like if you could just do things a little differently, say it better, stay calmer, be more loving, more patient, less emotional, maybe they'd finally soften. Maybe they'd love you back the way you love them. But here's the truth. You could be a literal saint, and it still wouldn't be enough. Not because you're not worthy of love, but because a narcissist isn't looking for love, they're looking for control. They're not seeking connection, they're seeking validation, admiration, and power. And those things can never be truly shared, they're taken, extracted, demanded. You didn't cause their behavior, you didn't fail them, you didn't trigger their wounds. Their narcissism is their survival system, a complex mix of deep insecurity, emotional immaturity, and often unhealed trauma. But just because it has roots in pain doesn't mean you need to let that pain dictate the terms of your life. Understanding this sets you free because it untangles you from the illusion that you are the problem. It helps you stop asking questions like, what did I do wrong? Why can't I make them happy? What more can I give? You can give everything, your time, your tenderness, your truth, and they will still say it's not enough, not because you're lacking, but because a narcissist is a bottomless cup, and no matter how much you pour in, it will never be full. When you stop taking their behavior personally, you reclaim your power. You stop chasing the fantasy version of who you wish they could be. You stop bending over backwards trying to earn love from someone who uses your empathy as leverage. You learn to say, the reaction isn't a reflection of me. The disapproval doesn't define me. The inability to love doesn't make me unlovable. This is not your shame to carry. This is not your mirror to stand in front of. This is not your responsibility to heal. You are not the villain in their story, and you don't need to keep rewriting yourself as the savior either. Let them own their choices. Let them sit with their consequences. You are not here to fix their broken pieces. You're here to honor your whole self. Because once you truly understand that narcissism is not about you, you stop living in reaction to it, and you start living in response to your truth. Let's talk about boundaries. Not walls, not ultimatums, not angry outbursts or silent treatment. Real boundaries, the kind rooted in self-respect and compassion. Because here's what often happens when you're dealing with a narcissist. You don't set boundaries. Or if you do, you constantly move them, you soften them, you make them negotiable. You want to be the bigger person, the peacemaker, and they take full advantage of that. But boundaries are not punishments. Boundaries are not cruel. Boundaries are clarity. They are you saying, this is what I will allow into my life, and this is what I won't. This is how I deserve to be treated. This is where I end and you begin. Narcissists hate boundaries, not because boundaries are wrong, but because boundaries disrupt their control. They thrive in the gray areas, in blurred lines, in your silence and second guessing. When you start speaking up, when you start naming what hurts, when you stop justifying what can't be justified, the dynamic shifts. And they will push back hard. They'll call you selfish, cold, overreacting, dramatic. They'll tell you you've changed, and they're right. You're no longer abandoning yourself to keep the peace. Setting boundaries with a narcissist doesn't always lead to cooperation. In fact, often it leads to escalation. Why? Because boundaries force them to face something they've spent a lifetime avoiding: accountability. And that's not your job to manage. Your job is to protect your peace, not preserve their comfort. But here's the part that matters most. Boundaries don't need to come from anger. They don't have to be harsh to be effective. You can set them with love, with calm, with certainty. You can say, I won't continue this conversation if I'm being insulted. I need space to think, and I'm stepping away now. This topic is off limits. I've said what I need to say. When you raise your voice, I feel unsafe. I will re-engage when we can speak respectfully. And you don't need them to agree with your boundary. That's the part so many of us forget. A boundary is not a request, it's a declaration. It doesn't require their understanding. It only requires your follow through. It might feel unnatural at first. You might feel guilt. Guilt is a symptom of your conditioning, not a sign you're doing something wrong. You've been trained to believe that saying no makes you mean, that advocating for yourself is selfish, but it's not. Boundaries are the language of self-love. They are how you teach others how to treat you. They are how you rebuild trust with yourself. Because every time you abandon your own limits to please someone else, a small part of you learns that your needs don't matter. But when you set a boundary and honor it, that part of you, the one who's been silenced, minimized, and dismissed, starts to rise. And you begin to remember that you are worthy of safety, worthy of respect, worthy of peace. Boundaries might cost you a relationship, but they will never cost you your soul. So speak clearly, stand firmly, love fiercely, and include yourself in that love. Let's tell the truth. You have been bending yourself into shapes you were never meant to hold, all in the hope of earning their approval, their validation, their permission to feel good about yourself. And every time you thought, maybe this time they'll see me, appreciate me, love me the way I deserve, you were met with the same cycle: praise, followed by withdrawal, interest, followed by distance, approval, followed by criticism. Narcissists are masters of manipulation. They create a moving target. One moment you're their favorite, the next you're being punished for something you didn't even know you did. You start to feel like you're walking on eggshells, constantly scanning the room for their mood, their cues, their reaction. And somehow their feelings become your responsibility. But I want to say this loud and clear. You don't need their approval to be enough. You already are. Their approval isn't love, it's leverage. It's a carrot they dangle in front of you to keep you running in circles. It's a form of control, not connection. Because if they can keep you craving their praise, they can keep you small, they can keep you performing, they can keep you from ever asking the real question. Why am I outsourcing my sense of worth to someone who refuses to see me clearly? When you seek approval from a narcissist, you'll never feel safe because their validation is transactional, it's conditional, it's based on whether you're pleasing them, serving them, reflecting the version of reality they need to maintain their fragile ego. And here's the part that stings. They may never approve of you. Not because you're flawed, but because to approve of you would mean acknowledging your power, your light, your truth. And for someone who sees others as extensions of themselves, Your autonomy is threatening. So what do? You stop chasing their gold stars and start giving yourself the validation you've been waiting for. You begin to listen to your own voice. You start asking yourself, what do I think? How do I feel? What do I need? You realize that the only permission slip you ever needed was your own. You remind yourself, I'm not here to be liked by everyone. I'm here to be me. I'm not here to fit into someone else's fantasy. I'm here to live my truth. Their opinion is not my identity. The day you stop seeking their approval is the day you begin to reclaim your freedom. You stop performing and start living. You stop editing yourself to stay lovable, and you start loving yourself in your full, unedited truth. This is not easy. Approval seeking is often rooted in old wounds, childhood patterns, attachment trauma, deep-seated fears of abandonment or rejection. But just because it started in the past doesn't mean you have to keep living in it. Your worth isn't a question mark. It's a period, a full stop, a non-negotiable. You don't need anyone's applause to validate your existence. You are not a performance. You are a person, a whole, complex, beautiful, enough person. And when you finally stop trying to win over someone who keeps moving the finish line, that's when you remember you were never meant to earn your value. You were meant to embody it. You hear a lot about physical safety, and yes, that matters deeply. But emotional safety, that's the invisible kind, the kind that doesn't leave bruises on your skin, but leaves them on your heart. And if you've been entangled with a narcissist, you know exactly what I mean. Emotional safety means you don't have to brace yourself every time they enter the room. It means your nervous system isn't constantly scanning for the next explosion, the next withdrawal, the next guilt trip, the next passive-aggressive jab hidden behind a smile. It means you don't have to edit yourself, perform for peace, or carry the weight of their moods as if they're your fault. But narcissists don't create safe emotional spaces. They create chaos, confusion. You can be laughing with them in the morning and crying by night. You can be celebrated one moment and degraded the next. They blur the line between love and fear so well that you start to think this is normal. But let me tell you, this is not love. This is emotional exhaustion. And emotional exhaustion isn't something to brush off. It chips away at you slowly, quietly. You stop trusting yourself. You question your reactions. You downplay your hurt. You start telling yourself things like, it's not that bad. I didn't mean it. If I just stay calm, maybe they'll stop. I'm probably overreacting. You're not overreacting. You're reacting to something that's real. And the longer you stay in a space where emotional safety is absent, the harder it becomes to recognize what peace even feels like. So what does it look like to prioritize your emotional safety? It looks like walking away from conversations that turn cruel. It looks like refusing to be gaslit, to let someone rewrite your reality. It looks like choosing silence when they want chaos and choosing distance when they demand control. It looks like trusting your gut when it tells you this doesn't feel right. It looks like saying, no more explaining myself to someone who isn't listening. No more sacrificing my sanity to keep the peace. No more dimming my light to avoid their insecurity. And yes, prioritizing your emotional safety might mean disappointing them. It might mean losing the relationship altogether. But you know what you gain? You gain clarity, you gain strength, you gain yourself. And yourself is not something you can afford to lose. Not for anyone, not even for someone who claims to love you while simultaneously eroding the very parts of you that make you you. Emotional safety is not a luxury, it is not negotiable, it is a requirement for any relationship to be healthy, mutual, and real. If love costs you your peace, it's too expensive. So choose yourself every time, not with rage, but with resolve. Not with shame, but with sacredness. Because your heart is not a battlefield and your mind is not a dumping ground. It is your home, and your home deserves to be safe. Let's get honest about something that might be hard to admit. You've been trained to believe that being liked is more important than being whole. That saying yes when you mean no is kindness. That staying silent when something hurts you is strength. That keeping the peace, even if it costs your dignity, is love. But here's the truth that might shake something loose inside you. People-pleasing isn't noble, it's self-abandonment dressed up as virtue. And when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, people-pleasing becomes survival. You learn quickly that your needs trigger them, that your truth is too much, that your boundaries threaten their illusion of control. So you adapt. You smooth your edges, you swallow your voice, you become who they want, not because you're weak, but because you're wired for connection. You thought, if I can just make them happy, I'll finally feel safe. But what if I told you that people-pleasing doesn't lead to peace, it leads to resentment? That every time you betray yourself to keep someone else comfortable, you reinforce the lie that their feelings matter more than yours, that their version of reality matters more than your lived experience? Self-respect is what people-pleasing will always cost you. Self-respect says, I don't have to agree with you to be worthy. I don't have to perform to be accepted. I can disappoint you and still be a good person. And yes, you will disappoint people when you stop people-pleasing, especially those who benefited from your silence, especially those who liked you better when you had fewer boundaries, fewer opinions, fewer needs. But those people were never loving you, they were consuming you. Self-respect is when you stop letting people feast on your energy and call it connection. Words is when you say, I matter too. My needs are not up for debate. My worth doesn't increase when you approve of me, and it doesn't shrink when you don't. It's choosing to be misunderstood over being misused. It's choosing to tell the truth even if your voice shakes. It's choosing to walk away from people who only love the version of you that doesn't make them uncomfortable. And I know this shift isn't easy. People-pleasing can feel like safety, especially when it helped you survive in the past. But survival is not the same as living. And you were not born to shape-shift your way into someone else's limited love. You were born to stand in your wholeness, even if it means standing alone sometimes. Because when you choose self-respect over people-pleasing, you reclaim your voice. You reclaim your power. You reclaim your right to exist without explanation. And something beautiful happens. You stop chasing acceptance and start attracting people who don't need you to shrink to stay. So here it is, plain and powerful. Self-respect isn't a luxury, it's your foundation. And when you start building from that place, not from fear, not from guilt, but from truth, everything begins to change. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your compliance. You owe yourself your freedom. And that starts with this choice. maybe a little bruised, maybe more tired than you'd like to admit, maybe still wrestling with the question, was it me? Let me say this as clearly as I can. No, it wasn't you. You were kind, you were giving, you were patient, hopeful, loyal. You tried harder than most would. You saw the potential in someone who kept showing you their reality, and you stayed, not because you were foolish, but because you were loving. But now it's time to be loving toward yourself. You are not here to be emotionally starved, manipulated, or silenced in the name of keeping the peace. You are not here to win someone's approval. That comes at the cost of your dignity. You are not here to water yourself down to be digestible for someone who refuses to sit at the table of mutual respect. You are here to live fully, freely, authentically. You are here to protect your peace, to walk in your truth, to honor your emotional safety like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. So stop being nice to the narcissist. Stop shrinking, stop performing, stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Start doing something revolutionary instead. Choose you. Choose your worth. Choose your boundaries. Choose your clarity over their confusion. Choose your peace over their chaos. Choose your self-respect over their fleeting approval. And know this, choosing you doesn't make you cold or cruel or unforgiving. It makes you whole. It makes you healed. It makes you free. You don't need to fix them. You don't need to save them. You only need to stop sacrificing yourself on the altar of their comfort. Your healing doesn't begin when they change. Your healing begins when you finally decide, I will no longer abandon myself for anyone. And from that place, that sacred, sovereign place, you rise